Good day again, Sir Levy is back. So we are gonna be discussing the popular culture, subculture, and cultural change. So by the end of this topic, you will be able to discuss the roles of both high culture and the popular culture within society, and differentiate between subculture and counterculture, explain the role of innovation, invention, and discovery in culture, and then understand the role of cultural lag and globalization in cultural change. So it may seem obvious that there are a multitude of cultural differences between societies in the world. Napakalaking diferensya ng bawat culture ng bawat society in the world. After all, we can easily see that people vary from one society to another kasi nga iba-ibang tao, distinct with each other, and also the society. It's natural that a young woman from rural Kenya would have a very different view of the world from an elderly man in Mumbai, one of the most populated cities in the world. Dahil na rin sa hirap ng buhay ng Africa, maaaring pangit ang tingin ng African woman sa buong daigdig. On the other hand, yung babae naman sa Mumbai, which is a rich city, ay maaaring maganda ang tingin sa daigdig o yung kanyang world perspective. Additionally, each culture has its own internal variations. Sometimes the differences between cultures are not nearly as large as the differences inside cultures. Ang best example niyan ay ang Christianity in the Philippines with different denominations. Merong isang culture of belief which is Christianity, and yet there are different subcultures like Catholicism, Protestantism, Eastern Orthodox, Anglican, and non-Trinitarian. Do you prefer listening to opera or hip-hop music? Do you like watching horse racing or NASCAR? Do you read books of poetry or celebrity magazines? In each pair, one type of entertainment is considered highbrow and the other is lowbrow. Ang mga sociologists natin ay ginagamit ang term na high culture to describe the pattern of cultural experiences and attitudes that exist in the highest class segments of a society o yung tinatawag ng mga elite. People often associate high culture with intellectualism, political power, and prestige. So in America, high culture also tends to be associated with wealth o kayamanan. Events considered high culture can be expensive and formal, attending a ballet, seeing a play, or listening to a live symphony performance. The term popular culture, on the other hand, refers to the pattern of cultural experiences and attitudes that exist in mainstream society. So when we say mainstream, it is the normal society o kung ano yung normal na nakikita natin sa society. Popular culture events might include a parade, a baseball game, or the season finale of a television show. Rock and pop music, pop is short for popular, are part of popular culture. Popular culture is often expressed and spread via commercial media such as radio, television, movies, the music industry, publishers, and corporate-run websites. So therefore, popular culture is the common culture in a society o yung madalas yung nakikita o naobserbahan o na-experience in a certain society. Unlike high culture, popular culture is known and accessible to most people. You can share a discussion of favorite football teams with a new coworker or comment on American Idol when making small talk in line at the grocery store. But if you try to launch into a deep discussion on the classical Greek play, Antigone, few members of US society today would be familiar with it. Ganon din dito sa Pilipinas. Ang madalas natin pinag-uusapan ay ang mga popular culture gaya ng mga sikat na kanta, sikat na pelikula at sikat na teleserye sa Pilipinas. Mas madaling pag-usapan ang mga popular culture rather than the high culture dahil mas maraming nakakaalam ng popular culture. Although high culture may be viewed as superior o mas mataas to popular culture, the labels of high culture and popular culture vary over time and place. Nagbabago ang popular culture and high culture depende sa time at sa place. Shakespearean plays considered popular culture when they were written. Nung panahon ni Shakespeare, ang Shakespearean plays ay popular culture lamang. and now part of society's high culture. Sa ngayon, high culture na siya. 500 years from now, will our descendants associate Breaking Bad with cultural elite? O baka naman yung mga kanta ni Moira de la Torre? What do you think? We have what we call a subculture. What is a subculture? It is just what it sounds like, a smaller culture or cultural group within a larger culture. People of a subculture are part of the larger culture but also share a specific identity within a smaller group. Ang subculture ay ang culture within a culture. It is the culture, smaller portion of culture inside a larger culture. Ang best example niyan in the Philippines ay ang religion o yung pagiging religious ng mga Filipinos. So that is the culture, and yet may mga subcultures tayo o yung kultura na nasa loob ng kultura ng pagiging religious. So we have the Catholicism o yung Catholic nga, that is a subculture, Protestants, Islam, independent churches, Iglesia ni Cristo. And also may subculture pa dyan sa loob ng Catholics. Hindi kasi lahat ng Catholics ay magkakamukha ng kultura. So we also have subculture in there. So, ang subculture ay micro, ang culture ay macro. Next, we have the counterculture na isa sa mga types of the subculture. So, sociologists distinguish subcultures from countercultures, which are a type of subculture that rejects o hindi nito tinatanggap ang larger culture's norms and values, in contrast to subcultures which operate relatively smoothly within the larger society. Countercultures might actively defy larger society by developing their own set of rules and norms to live by, sometimes even creating communities that operate outside of greater society. So ang counterculture ay parang ay isang kultura within a culture. So somehow it is a type of subculture kasi this is a culture within a culture, and yet this culture is absolutely rejecting the larger cultures or norms and also the values of a certain society. So kina-counter niya o nire-reject niya yung large culture of that society. Ang tawag natin dyan ay counterculture. So we have here an example, or the best example is the cult or cults, a word derived from culture. So, salitang cult ay galing sa salitang culture, which are the group of people considered as countering the culture or counter-culture group. So, the group yearning for Zion in El Dorado, Texas existed outside the mainstream and the limelight until its leader was accused of statutory rape and underage marriage. The sex formal norms clashed too severely to be tolerated by US law, and in 2008, authorities raided the compound and removed more than 200 women and children from the property. So how many cultures or subcultures have been broken by this cult? Polygamy o yung marami ang marriage o pinapakasalan ng isang lalaki, at statutory rape, which is absolutely a counterculture. So there had been an evolution of American hipster subculture. So may tinatawag silang skinny jeans, chunky glasses, and t-shirts with vintage logos. The American hipster is a recognizable figure in the modern United States, based on predominantly in metropolitan areas, sometimes clustered around hotspots such as the Williamsburg neighborhood in New York City. Hipsters define themselves through a rejection of the mainstream, na later on ay na-adapt din ng Pilipinas during the 80s and the 90s. Young people are often drawn to oppose mainstream conventions, even if in the same way that others do. Ironic, quote to the point of non-caring and intellectual, hipsters continue to embody a subculture while simultaneously impacting mainstream culture. As the hipster example illustrates, culture is always evolving. Nagbabago ang culture natin. Moreover, new things are added to material culture every day. So when we say material culture, Ito yung mga nakikita ninyo at nasasalat ninyo na parte ng ating kultura, and it's changing every day. And they affect non-material culture as well. Yung norms and values natin ay naapektuhan. Cultures change when something new, say railroads or smartphones, opens up new ways of living, and when new ideas enter a new culture, say as a result of travel or globalization. Whenever there is new thing or innovation, basta mayroong innovation, mayroong new invention, nagkakaroon ngayon ng new way of living. Dati wala tayong cellphones, nowadays meron na tayong cellphones. It is now part of our day-to-day living. Kaya wag tayong magtaka na darating ang araw ay meron na tayong holograms, or we can have cell phones on our skin. Hindi natin alam, because culture is changing every day. An innovation refers to an object or concept's initial appearance in society. It's innovative because it is markedly new. There are two ways to come across an innovative object or idea: discover it or invent it. Discoveries make known previously unknown but existing aspects of reality. In 1610, when Galileo looked through his telescope and discovered Saturn, the planet was already there, but not until then, no one had known about it. So ang innovation ay ang pagkakaroon ng initial appearance ng isang konsepto o ng isang object in a society. Pwede itong maging invention or discovery. Discovery is something previously unknown, malalaman mo na, but it is already existing. That is discovering. Like for example, when Galileo discovered his telescope can look at the Saturn, he discovered the planet Saturn. And yet, itong Saturn ay matagal naman nang nandoon. So that is a discovery. When Christopher Columbus encountered America, the land was, of course, already well known to its inhabitants. However, Columbus' discovery was new knowledge for Europeans, and it opened the way to changes in European culture, as well as to the cultures of the discovered lands. For example, new foods such as potatoes and tomatoes transformed the European diet, and horses brought from Europe changed hunting practices of Native American tribes of the Great Plains. Ang laki ng impact ng pagdating ni Christopher Columbus in America. So the European culture had changed because of that. And also the Americans changed its culture. Natutong gumamit ng kabayo ang mga Native American tribes sa paghahunt, and yung mga Europeans, they learned how to eat potatoes and tomatoes. Since innovations result when something new is formed from existing objects or concepts, when things are put together in an entirely new manner. So in the late 1800s and early 1900s, electric appliances were invented at an astonishing pace. Cars, airplanes, vacuum cleaners, lamps, radios, telephones, and televisions were all new inventions. Inventions may shape a culture when people use them in place of older ways of carrying out activities and relating to others, or as a way to carry out new kinds of activities. So their adoption reflects and may shape cultural values, and the use may require new norms for new situations. Dahil sa mga bagong inventions ng mga inventors like electric appliances noong 18th and 19th century, ay nagkaroon ng mabilisang change in the culture. So like the cars, airplanes, yan yung mga vacuum natin, vacuum cleaners, even lamps, radios, televisions, etc. Nagkaroon ng malaking pagbabago sa culture. Why? Yung lumang paraan ng pamumuhay natin ay hindi na yun. Magkakaroon ng bagong cultural values, kakaroon din ng new norms in other new situations. Consider the introduction of modern communication technology such as mobile phones and smartphones. As more and more people began carrying these devices, phone conversations no longer were restricted to homes, offices, and phone booths. People on trains, in restaurants, and in other public places became annoyed by listening to one-sided conversations. Norms were needed for cell phone use. Some people pushed for the idea that those who are out in the world should pay attention to their companions and surroundings. However, technology enabled a workaround, texting, which enables quiet communication and has surpassed phoning as the chief way to meet today's highly valued activity or ability to stay in touch anywhere and everywhere. When the pace of innovation increases, it can lead to generation gaps. Technological gadgets that catch on quickly with one generation are sometimes dismissed by a skeptical older generation. A culture's objects and ideas can cause not just generational but cultural gaps. Material culture tends to diffuse more quickly than non-material culture. Technology can spread through society in a matter of months, but it can take generations for the ideas and beliefs of society to change. So sociologist William F. Ogburn coined the term culture lag to refer to this time that elapses between the introduction of a new item of material culture and its acceptance as part of non-material culture. So ang innovation ay nagli-lead sa generation gap between the older generation and the new generation. So pag nagkaroon ng technological advancement, hindi ito ginugusto ng mga old generation because they are very skeptical. So nagkakaroon ngayon ng culture gap na tinatawag ni William Ogburn na culture lag. Yung mga lolo't lola natin at yung mga tatay natin na hindi makasabay sa ating ay usually nagkakaroon ng culture lag. Culture lag can also cause tangible problems. The infrastructure of the United States, built 100 years ago or more, matagal na ito, is having trouble supporting today's more heavily populated and fast-paced life kasi hindi na niya kayang isupport yung bagong technology at bagong culture na kailangan for today's life. Yet there is a lag in conceptualizing solutions to infrastructure problems. Rising fuel prices, increased air pollution, traffic jams are all symptoms of culture lag. Although people are becoming aware of the consequences of overusing resources, the means to support changes takes time to achieve. So for example, yung EDSA, no, kung titingnan natin EDSA, yung pagkakagawa ng roads and tulay natin, bridges natin sa may EDSA ay napakahirap ayusin. Why? Because you need to change the whole structure. So kailangan siyang bagbagin, kailangan ding i-reconstruct yung mga dapat i-reconstruct. Resulta ngayon, natatagalan tayo sa advancement. So that is an example of culture lag. Therefore, the traffic in EDSA is a result of culture lag class. The integration of world markets and technological advances of the last decades have allowed for greater exchange between cultures through the processes of globalization and diffusion. So isa sa mga factors kung bakit nagkaroon ng cultural changes ay yung diffusion at globalization. So beginning in the 1980s, Western governments began to deregulate social services while granting greater liberties to private businesses. As a result, world markets became dominated by multinational companies in the 1980s, a new state of affairs at that time. In short, ang government natin ay hinayaan na magkaroon ng liberty or great liberties ang mga private businesses natin. The reason why nagtiyaga ang mga private businesses natin to innovate and to invent their products and commodities. Ang resulta, globalization. Ang role ng globalization ay it changes the whole culture of humanity and every community. So lahat ng bunga ng globalization ay advancement to the different aspects of human lives, gaya ng communication, transportation, and even the technology to search a lot of things, especially like Google. Alongside the process of globalization is diffusion, or the spread of material and non-material culture. While globalization refers to the integration of markets, diffusion relates to a similar process in the integration of international cultures. So kung ang globalization ay may nature na market at commercial, ang diffusion naman is cultural. It includes the material and non-material culture. Nag-i-spread to all throughout the whole world. Nagkakaroon ng tinatawag na diffusion. Kaakibat kasi ng spread of the technology through globalization ay ang pag-spread ng different cultures all throughout the world, at yan ay tinatawag nating diffusion. So for example, yung paggamit ng ating mga online-based na applications na kung saan pwede kayong mag-video call, pwede kayong mag-calling, mag-texting through internet, yan ngayon ang kumakalat na popular culture in the Philippines through the use of diffusion. Kumalat ang Snapchat, pati yung mga dating apps, kumalat ang iba't ibang applications na related into communication to other people in the whole world. So kayo, sa palagay nyo, is there any advantage of globalization and also disadvantages? Meron din kayang advantage and disadvantages and diffusion? So let's have now the summary of the topic. Sociologists recognize high culture and popular culture within societies. Meron talagang high culture and popular culture. Societies are also comprised of many subcultures na tinatawag na smaller groups that share an identity or culture within a culture, that's subculture. Countercultures reject mainstream values and create their own cultural rules and norms. Therefore, nire-reject nito ang dominant culture at nagkikreate sila ng bago nilang culture, especially nga mga cults. Through invention or discovery, innovation, cultures evolve. Nag-evolve ang culture natin via invention, discovery, and innovation via new ideas and new ways of thinking. In many modern cultures, ang cornerstone ng innovation is technology. So, ang rapid growth ngayon ng technology at ng innovation ay nagre-resulta sa cultural lag o naglalag yung ilang mga older generation sa paggamit ng technology, resulta cultural lag. So technology is also responsible for the spread of both material and non-material culture that contributes to globalization and also to diffusion. Napakalaki ng role ng technology natin pagdating sa spread ng material at non-material culture. When we say material, yan yung mga tangible culture natin, gaya ng flags, chairs, etc. So non-material culture, these are the norms and the values we have. So guys, maybe this is the time to say goodbye. So thank you so much for listening and watching. See you next time. This is Sir Levy and I am signing off. Okay guys, that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.